Good morning and welcome. My name is Lee Marnie. I'm the Managing Director of Payments and Cash Management and Digital Solutions here at ANZ. I just want to thank you all for making the time to join this, what I'm hoping to be a great session on real-time Treasury. It's the 5th webinar that we've run this year as part of ANZ's Future Ready Now series. And that program's designed to keep you, our customers, at the centre of everything we do, sharing practical insights, thought leadership, timely perspectives that you can use to navigate change and plan for the future. And so whether you've been following along across the series or you're joining us for the first time today, we're really pleased to have you with us. Before we get started though, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting today. I'm joining from Melbourne, the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, acknowledge their continuing connection to land, waters and the community. And I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today from wherever you are. Today's session's being recorded and you'll be able to access it tomorrow on our webpage. And we'd love you to share the content with colleagues who are unable to attend today or to simply revisit some of the content which may have sparked your interest. And importantly, please post your questions as we go into the Q&A or upvote a posted question so we can prioritise it for what's most useful for the group. Later in the session, we'll tackle the top questions and we've got some great people helping us do that. So let's get into it. So as payments become faster, always on and higher in value, the pressure on traditional treasury models is increasing. Processes designed for batch cycles, any manual approval and end of day oversight are no longer enough in an environment where money can move instantly around the clock and around the globe. So what this changes is not just our payments infrastructure, it changes the Treasury operating model itself. It affects how organisations think about control, liquidity, visibility and decision making. And in a real-time environment, Treasury is expected to move from periodic reporting to continuous awareness with intraday cash positions, faster reconciliation and more informed decisions happening much closer to the moment of payment. And so this is why leading organisations today are not waiting for the future to arrive. They're actually rethinking Treasury from an always-on environment. They're embedding intelligence, rules and controls directly into payment flows rather than relying on manual intervention after the event. And so the goal is not simply to move faster, but to move with greater precision, funding accounts when needed, reducing any idle cash, creating the flexibility to respond to issues before they become losses. And so this is also where Treasury, technology and risk management are increasingly converging. APIs, richer payment data and more connected platforms are giving Treasury teams better visibility across accounts, entities and flows. And the most forward-looking institutions are using that connectivity to build more responsive and resilient models, thereby improving their cash visibility, supporting just-in-time liquidity, and strengthening controls without slowing their execution. So today's session is about separating the hype from practical action. And we're going to explore what real-time Treasury looks like in practice, what our customers are doing now, how ANZ is helping organisations shift from manual oversight to build-in trust, making Treasury safer, smarter, and more scalable while turning the speed of payment into the speed of insight and action. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce our panel today. I'm joined by colleagues Rob Porter, Head of Digital Asset Services, Hari Janakiraman, Head of Industry and Innovation for Transaction Banking, and Manish Joshi, Head of Strategic Sales for our International Payments and Cash Management. And a reminder to please keep posting your questions in the Q&A. And so I might just start with a bit of a steer at the moment. I'll go maybe straight to Hari. So Treasury now faces a clear tension. It's got to operate across near instant domestic rails, fragmented regional systems, always on payments, and teams can't watch dashboards 24/7. That's just not practical. So the real question is how to move from visibility to controlled action, shifting from observing liquidity to orchestrating it. So Hari, from your perspective, what's changed the most in Treasury over the last 12 to 18 months that makes the traditional dashboard model no longer really sufficient?
Thanks, Lee, and good morning, everyone. Great to be here and talking about our favorite subject, future of Treasury. Uh, like Lee, like you mentioned, the biggest change over the last 12 to 18 months has been a steady but a sure move towards always on Treasury. So that is the number one change which is happening. Now, if you look back at how Treasury teams have been managing in the past, and many Treasury teams today have work around end of day reporting, they have batch cycles, they have manual follow ups. Dashboards are extremely useful for that. So, dashboard gives you that visibility which are needed. But in today's environment, like you touched upon, payments are faster, payments are larger value, our customers want immediacy, domestic rails are increasingly becoming real time. And most of our customers operate businesses which are in different markets that do not all move at the same speed. So the issue now is not about whether Treasury can see more. Of course, they can. It's about they can see that they have more balances, they have more transaction data, more alerts. The real crux of the issue here is what do they do with it? What's next? For example, let's say a liquidity position in one of your entities or subs or branches, it changes at 2 p.m. in Singapore, or there is a payment spike in your entity in Australia. You can see it on a dashboard today, but seeing it on a dashboard doesn't necessarily solve the issue. Someone still has to interpret what is happening, understand the forecast, decide what to do with it. So where we are moving today is that model is not sufficient in a world where it is more and more real time and always on. And we are moving towards a world where visibility is key, but you need to be able to have move action on that with control and confidence. So that's where it is moving. And so the same example, if I take that example, the dashboard can say this is what is going to happen. You're going to have a liquidity issue, or you're going to have excess payment in a place. What we are starting to see is the value which comes is what does that information trigger? That information trigger can be based on a policy, which can say, for example, you sweep funds, you pre-fund an account, you seek approval before a payment fails, all of the liquidity is trapped. So going back to the initial point is we are moving away from we need visibility to we need to be able to action on what is visible with control and confidence.
And I'm just interested, Hari, when you're talking to treasurers, how does, I mean, that sounds like a really interesting problem. How do you think that, what a treasurer is saying to you about how does that really manifest itself for them? How does it become apparent that this is actually a problem that needs to get solved?
I think it becomes apparent because one is the world is first you're now increasingly having these tools. So because you have to react to a world which is moving at a different pace than what it has been in the past. So there is the from when I speak to treasurers, one of the things they highlight to me is, and they are always interested. What we are seeing that our environment which we operate in, whether it be our suppliers, our customers, or our employees, or the regulators, they are expecting us to move at a pace which has not been the same even 12, 18 months back. So that is what is manifesting. So visibility is extremely important. It's critical to manage your treasury function. It is going to help you understand what is coming. But what treasurers are telling us now is, okay, that's great. Now we have embedded that. We need to really understand how we are going to action on that visibility and what tools are available for us to action in a very confident and immediate manner.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. I might throw to you, Manish, if that's okay. I'm interested in from your experience, where does the gap show up most clearly today for Treasury teams? Is it data quality, forecasting confidence, or maybe the ability to act on information quickly enough?
Based in SG, I help large corporates manage their payments and cash managements in international markets. What I have seen is, despite of the size of the business, the three problems that you listed are faced by the treasuries depending on the maturity of the treasury setup. Uh, Data quality issues have largely been addressed over last uh, 10 years, I would say. Most organizations have MDM systems for managing their master data. Their transactional data is managed through ERP and TMS systems. ISO XML standards have helped data to become self-describing. Most organizations have also reworked through their processes where there is no data duplication, there is a single golden source, and as much as possible, data flows in a sequential manner. That enables organizations to go to the next problem, which is forecasting. Forecasting remains an issue because it's a function of data quality. It is also a function of external triggers, which is unpredictable for most of businesses. There are a lot of third-party products which help clients to create a forecasting prediction, but all of it depends on the quality of data and how much of external variables you are able to map and link to that system. That brings us to the third and most severely experienced problem, which is ability to act quickly. As we moved along from manual systems to semi-automatic to straight-through processing, now it is about, can I have that straight-through processing 24 by 7? And can it be executed automatically by agents rather than me manually? Uh, and this ability to act quickly has become important because of external factors, starting from COVID pandemic to now geopolitics, and it's the businesses which are demanding Treasury to be agile. So these are roughly the three themes I would say are what we are experiencing with clients in international markets.
Yeah, thanks, Manish. Now we've got, I'm just interested in sort of exploring a little bit more around perhaps the next step in Treasury modernisation. And we've got an expert, actually we've got experts on digital assets here all around the place, Hari and Rob. But I might just pass to Rob, actually, if that's okay. Yeah, Rob, from your perspective, does the next step in Treasury modernisation still sit mainly in better workflows? Or does new settlement infrastructure start to matter as well?
Thanks, Lee, and good morning, everyone. I think it's a really good question and one we get quite often. And you're often challenged to say, should I be doing X or should I be doing Y? I think as we know things in life, the reality is a bit more complicated and you probably should think about doing both. That then prompts you to think about what goes first and where do I derive the most benefit. And I think in the short to medium term, there's a strong argument that better workflows are probably the immediate priority to generate business value in the first instance. And I think as Hari alluded to earlier, we know that many large organizations have very good visibility and insights from their data, but their ability to drive action off that is perhaps somewhat limited. So I think the ability to develop those workflows, so you have greater capability around orchestration and automation, based upon some robust policy engines, is probably the first order priority. Equally, probably worth calling out that workflow is only as good as the systems and rails that it sits on top of. So we do know that there are certain, depending on what you're seeking to do, payment infrastructure may not be available on a 24/7 basis. You may have missed a cutoff time, or you might be moving money across borders where time zones are at play. So I think the two are interrelated, which is where it plays to in terms of digital assets. And look, I think digital assets is often kind of replete with jargon, and we should just simplify it. We should talk about the fact that we have ledgers. Ledgers have accounts and they have balances. In the new world, we will have blockchains that have accounts that have token balances. So these things are not a million miles apart. What's interesting is that ability, theoretically, for the infrastructure to be available 24/7 and very resilient, and to have things like programmability embedded, so we can have more sophisticated workflows. So I think in summary, for me, it's not an either or, it's both. And I think it's having those workflows on the platform so you can move liquidity to when and where it's needed.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. Perhaps we'll get into a bit more of that later on because it sounds pretty exciting and perhaps a little bit mysterious, to be honest with you, at the same time. I'd like to maybe just explore now some friction points and perhaps where there might be some gaps in integration. And I might head to Manish here as well. Where do you see, Manish, the biggest friction points today when Treasury teams try and move liquidity across different geographies, let's say Australia, New Zealand, and Asian markets?
Sure. This depends on the nature of the market in terms of currency movement. Thankfully, Australia, New Zealand are open currency markets. So we see a lot of large corps balancing their positions between Australia and New Zealand through trans-Tasman sweeps. The other open markets are Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, and a lot of MNCs use one of these markets as a regional headquarter for better access to FX and commodities markets, to bring in the cash regionally into these markets. Friction points are around there is still cash left in source accounts because the sweep happened earlier, and that is because of the cutoff times, as Rob mentioned. So friction is around can that treasury transfers as well as third-party vendor payments, can those be 24/7? The problem is somewhat solved in domestic market through domestic instant payment rails in each country. These domestic rails have now also been connected across the countries. So for example, Singapore and India is connected, Singapore and Thailand is connected, and Singapore and Malaysia is connected on the domestic rails, which means you can do domestic currency payments across these cross borders. Of course, it comes with the limitations of the cap on the amount that is placed. To demystify the digital assets and to solve that problem of money movement post cutoff times, organization looked at options that they have. So the fiat currency option limited by cutoff times, multi-domestic instant payments solving it to the some extent. Third option is bank proposed tokens, and those further can be classified as either just general ledger transfers and others being permissioned blockchain based tokens. Organizations are also looking at stable coins, meaning backed by a stable asset such as US dollar. There were stable coins issued on other assets such as gold and oil, but nobody believes these are stable assets anymore. Other fourth option is of central bank issued digital currency. This comes with the typical guarantee of the central bank, although the currency is only in digital format. China taking a lead on this. There are organizations who looked at cryptocurrency as a way to transfer, but given the other five better options, it has not picked up as much. So the problem remains on money movement, and to solve the cash visibility, cash concentration, yield optimization solutions on that. And in international markets, is really driven by the nature of openness of the currency market. So countries like Vietnam and India have strictest of the currency markets, and there are more local solutions to optimize the interest on those cash held by businesses. China, Philippines, Indonesia, Taiwan are somewhat of semi-restricted markets where there are terms and conditions, and often you need a regulatory license to be able to transfer money. So these are the problems organizations are trying to solve today.
Thanks, Manish. I want to get to data in a moment, but just quickly, Hari, I'm interested in perhaps in your view, what does an effective payment and liquidity orchestration layer need to do if it's going to work across traditional rails, internal liquidity structures and emerging digital networks? Long question there, but maybe just give us some of your insight into that briefly.
Sure, and I think that the answer is essentially, in my view, a very simple answer, but we need to unpeel it. Of course, an effective orchestration layer needs to do one thing really well for treasurers, which is to make complexity manageable. That's what it is. Because most large organizations do not operate in a simple environment, and they have multiple entities, multiple banks, multiple jurisdictions, multiple currencies. There's a lot of complexities. On top of it, like Manish was mentioning, you have multiple forms of settlement. You have traditional settlement rails, and then you are increasingly seeing new forms of settlement rails. So the orchestration layer needs to sit above that complexity and help treasurers to manage that. That's what it is. And I'll just finish by saying 4 things it needs to do. Where is my liquidity, which is the visibility part we talked about? What do I need to do with that? So that is, so how does it interpret balances or forecast and tells me what to do? How should I then execute? So based on policies which the treasurer has set up, and then what do you do with that? Using the traditional payment rails, or do you have another notional structures you need to use, sweeps you need to use? And lastly, but most important, can I do this safely? So how do we ensure that it is all done safely? So 4 things. Where is my liquidity? What do I need to do? How do I execute? And can I do this safely is what orchestration layer is going to help the treasurers. But going back to where I started, it's all about managing complexity.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Harry. Great. I'm like, it's interesting when like, where am I going to start? Where does the orchestration layer sit? Right? Is it below or is it above? So great. That's really good insight. I just want to move to data, if that's okay. And I think this is an important topic because in this world of AI, AI is only as good as the data that feeds it. And so I think that data is really important. And so maybe if I go to Rob, please, if that's okay. What do you think, Rob, Treasury grade data looks like in the practice? In practice, if the goal is not just reporting, but getting better at faster decisioning and more automated execution.
Yeah, I like the phrase Treasury grade data. I think we talk bank grade data, we talk enterprise grade data. The common theme is around high quality, right? And I think it's a narrative that we've been talking about for a long time. And I'd even go further. I think in a world where we can imagine real-time money movement through tokenized assets and AI agents, this is a 10x importance on high quality data, quite frankly. So I think kind of to enliven that a little, I think your data has to be well structured. It has to be available in a timely manner to inform decision making. And probably most importantly, it has to have the integrity and be trustworthy enough to actually take action. And I think I don't want to belabor this point too much, but we know that reporting is a core capability, but it's foundational. The question is, how do I move to a position where I can act upon the data in a meaningful way? So can I have a view from a treasury perspective of balances, of cash flow? Can I make reasonable forecasts? And increasingly, to Ari's point, the complexity, we're trying to remove that and abstract that away. So there are multiple accounts, multiple different legal entities for sophisticated customers, multinationals moving money across jurisdictions. So having that consolidated view, I think, is probably amongst the most important pieces. But most of all, it's really around providing context, right? Because it's one thing, arguably, to think about AI, to define a policy engine, to deploy an agent. But if we don't have sufficient confidence that you can act on that data appropriately to drive action, then I don't think we've necessarily met the characteristics of what I call treasury grade data.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I like that treasury grade data. We talk about bank grade. This is treasury grade. I like the way you put the emphasis on. Just again on data, because I think it's important. I might move to Hari and maybe Hari, if you can give us some insight into the talk around ISO 20022 from a modernization perspective. And where do you see ISO 20022 delivering real commercial value for treasurers today, for example, in forecasting, reconciliation, or payment confidence?
Yeah. So Rob made a great point in terms of treasury grade data. I think that goes to the key point when it comes to commercial value from ISO 20022 is we should stop seeing that as an infrastructure modernization part. It is a data opportunity first and foremost. So what it gives treasurers is richer, more structured payment data that has value in treasury management. Now, if you want to break that value into four different things, one is you start with reconciliation. So reconciliation has been a pain point for forever, and at ANZ, one of our principles when you look at this for our customers is how do we eliminate reconciliation? And that starts with having good data. So more structured, consistent information, organization can get better at eliminating or completely automating the requirement for reconciliation. Second is forecasting. The better data you have, the more accurate and timely your forecasts are going to be. So ISO 20022 is going to make that big difference. Third one, you have done the forecast, you have the reconciliation, you've done the forecast, you will always have exceptions. So ISO 20022 is going to be able to, one, making it easier to identify what is expected and normal versus what is unexpected, and therefore what should be done with that. And the last but most important thing, and I've mentioned this word a few times today, is it enables treasurers to act with confidence because your data is structured. It's something you can rely on. You know exactly what it means. So that's what I think we should be thinking about ISO 20022. Don't think of this as infrastructure modernization, but think of this as a data opportunity.
Yeah, a good, great insight there, Hari. I want to move on, if I can, to if we've got the data in the right place and we can enable it to power different experiences. As we move into those different experiences, and let's say we're going from static liquidity structures to more dynamic, policy-driven models that can operate across multiple forms of money. Rob, what does programmable liquidity actually mean in practical treasury terms beyond the hype or the headline language?
Very good question. And I think it's important that we are kind of sit on a spectrum between, when we look at digital assets, where's the empirical evidence about how digital assets are being used, and where can we might speculate about what the future may look like? Look, I think for the most part, again, we talked earlier about jargon and terminology. In digital assets, what do we mean by tokenization? We mean creating an asset, a representation of the asset on a programmable platform, which is typically a blockchain. Now, there's another term, smart contracts, which is probably inappropriate term. They're neither smart nor contracts, but the ability to basically embed logic is probably the most important part. So the asset itself or the money can sit on a platform. And in the case of orchestration, the logic to act upon that asset can also sit there. I think where it gets interesting from a liquidity perspective as well is not just money, but assets on the same platform as well. So we're starting to see an emerging set of use cases whereby if liquidity was needed in the market, can we automate transactions like repo and do those type of things on chain? So as Manish alluded to earlier, we're starting to see central banks, regulators experiment more actively with this type of capability and provide the guardrails. So I think practically for treasurers at this stage is more about a learning opportunity about what can be done. The key thing will be, do we have the operating models to support the infrastructure and the services? Do we have the ability to intervene on a manual basis when necessary? So I think it's not just a technology problem. It's more around aligning with kind of governance and risk frameworks for the most part. But certainly the idea to program some of the conditions and then introduce AI agents to potentially act upon those conditions, subject to certain policy settings, I think is kind of the next frontier that we should be looking at.
Yeah, great. So just with that, Rob, we're talking about, what are the areas that we can use programmable contracts, smart contracts in the way that we manage liquidity. I'm just interested in sort of that language and how it moves into agentic, right? So we can take things from insight to execution. And perhaps Manish, if I could pass to you on this, because I think agentic actually helps us bring this programmable and AI to life through different use cases. So I'm interested in, as we move to this agentic world, right? What parts of Treasury decision making would you be comfortable moving first from manual action to recommendation, and from recommendation to approval-based execution?
Sure. I think first would be payments. So payments which are post some condition fulfillment, if that logic can be embedded, and it could be as complex as the LC conditions have matched and hence payment can go through, or it could be simple as a treasurer knowing via its business counterparts that goods have come into the warehouse and hence payment needs to be released. So some simple rules-based action could be made automatic via such smart execution contracts. The next increment would be to have an agent which does multiple of such steps in a sequential and logical manner, navigates the flowchart of executing those steps. That could be something like on-demand sweep. So our traditional sweeps are based on target balancing or zero balancing. Organizations are looking for sweeps which could be triggered based on complex combinations of conditions. It could be based on time, amount. It could be based on a huge payment coming in or a huge payment needs to go out. So payments and sweeps, this would be first two treasury touch points which are suitable for agentic action. And when I say payments, it's not about just making payments, it's also about how do I avoid fraudulent payments. So fraud prevention um, through machine learning and AI, where the machine learns your typical payment patterns, which countries, which amount, which currencies do you pay to normally, and something abnormal than that is caught and is sent to you for a highlight. So these will be few areas where organizations are looking at how can this be automated and made agentic.
Thanks, Manish. I want to stay on this AI item for another moment, if that's okay. Hari, you and I have talked a lot about AI and how it's going to change the world of payments and cash management, treasury and liquidity. And so I'm interested in your thoughts then, Hari, on when does an AI agent become genuinely useful in treasury as opposed to just another analytics layer, but moves to improve treasury execution?
Yeah, and I think that is that's the golden nugget, which I believe what AI agents are capable of doing, and they're developing. They become genuinely useful when we start and treasurers start using AI and agentic AI to not just describe the problem, but start helping treasury progress decisions. I think that's where the real shift is going to start. So a typical analytical type of an agent, which a lot of when I speak to treasurers, they are experimenting on those using natural language inquiries in their treasury platform to ask about what is going to be my forecast tomorrow, or show me a report for a particular account over the last few months. That is going to be there, and that's already there. What is going to happen is, okay, now you have that, what is going to happen? So what an AI agent can do is it can bring together relevant data, it can apply logic, policy logic, it can recommend an action, and it can then route that recommendation based on what the human in the loop says, do it, to the next action. Now, it's also quite possible in the future, which I think was definitely going to happen, you're going to have, and it's not going to be a binary decision in terms of which ones are human and which ones are agentic. It's going to be multiple tiers. You will have low value, repeatable actions which are completely automated versus certain types of actions where the agent will recommend and someone is going to automate. So that those types of things is what is going to come. So, for example, an action will be there is a there's an excess outflow, and the agentic agent AI has figured it out and identified what the forecast is, and then come to you saying, hey, there is an excess, but you don't need to worry because this money is going to come in, or there is an excess here and you need to do something about it. I suggest you go and request your bank to provide you some excess limits to do that, and here is the approval process to do so. So that's what we are aiming to see in terms of what Treasury is going to do. So it is not about agents making decisions on their own. It's about agents helping Treasury to make better, faster, and more informed decisions.
Yeah, great. No, I liked, you made one part of your comment there, Hari, was on human in the loop. And I think this is really an important concept when we're talking about AI, because AI can do all of this great stuff for us and make recommendations and so on and so forth. But one of the things that AI is not really good at is judgment, right? Humans make that decision. So I think that's a really big consideration, and it sort of ties into perhaps the next topic I'll quickly move to around governance and risk and real-time controls. And I might pass this one to you, Rob, if that's okay. So as Treasury starts combining AI decisioning with programmable forms of money and tokenization, what are the governance principles become even more important to our treasurers out there?
Yeah, very good question, Lee. And I think while it's an emerging field, letting everything's the technology is downstream of governance, right? So they know the technology works, and we're finding the right use cases and the fit. I think the term we like to use internally, and I know Hari's team has done a lot of work on this space, is around guardrails. So there's a few that I would kind of call out. I think important to understand what can an agent do and what can it not do. So how do you segregate those duties appropriately? So is it around preparing a payment and an instruction, but is that agent allowed to improve it? So understanding segregation duties is critical, which is really a function of what is policy. So understanding who can approve, what are the limits, are there certain things that cannot be done, and how is that determined offline, off chain first as a policy discussion before we start to implement those things. Similarly, then you can get to you start to graduate to a degree of what we might call tiered autonomy. So this idea that you might have some low risk type of transactions that you'll be more comfortable an agent acting upon, but there are other things that may be more high risk or depending on the value or the volume that you might want to escalate that for the human in the loop that you mentioned, Lee. We've also got to think that we're not going to be able to manage all the scenarios out of the box initially. So understanding how to manage acceptance in a practical way, I think, is critically important. And last but by no means least, this will be particularly important for people on the call, is audit trail. So how do we know what decisions were made by whom, where was AI used to assist with those decisions? So at the point of audit, we'll be able to go back and understand where decisions were made correctly, where things could be improved next time, and to be able to demonstrate that to the relevant stakeholders. So I think guardrails is critical. Get on with defining those before you get too far ahead with experimenting with the technology with my guidance.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I mean, guardrails, non-negotiable. Just on that, I might ask one more question before we go to some Q&A. But Manish, we'll give you the last formal question before we do that. And just in talking about those controls, what do you think are the non-negotiable controls that must be in place in addition or alongside what Rob was just talking about, that must be in place before Treasury can trust faster or autonomous execution?
Yeah, one will be definitely a human in the loop, or the logic which is monitored by human in the loop. Other is starting with smaller processes within processes which run within the treasury or within the company, and testing out it thoroughly that the AI agent doesn't hallucinate, for example, and doing it on manageable flows instead of sort of choosing one technology and jumping onto it to become your rails for next 10 years for real-time treasury. I would want organizations to understand what's available out there, watch the technology thoroughly, and also evaluate how does it affect your business. Does your business need that much of automation, artificial intelligence, and real-time activity? Or there are other existing ways to do that?
Great, thanks, Manish. So what we're going to do now is we'll go to Q&A from the participants on the webinar today, and we've got a question here for you, Hari. I'll just read it to you first. As real-time payments become the norm, what do you believe will most differentiate Treasury leaders over the next 3 to 5 years? Technology, data, operating model changes, or organizational capability?
All of the above. I'll start with that because
that's not an answer.
It's because that's true, right? I don't think there is a one single secret sauce which is going to unlock all the benefits. I think it's a combination of understanding the technology and how to effectively use the technology. We talked about data, treasury grade data, really taking advantage of ISO 20022 data structures and standards. Treasurers also need to start thinking about their own operating model. So if you were suddenly moving from end of day type of model to 24/7 always on, how much of that will depend on your teams, and how are your teams set up to do that? How are your systems set up to do that? And everything else in the organization. For example, how do your procurement contracts are set up in the future, and what does it mean for treasury? So really understanding that is going to be critical, and that then leads to organization. So it's all of the above, but I'll also leave it with this because the question is asking over the next 3 to 5 years. The honest answer is I can sit and predict how much it is, but we all know that this, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence and agentic AI in combination with tokenization, the world is moving so fast. I would not be surprised if with all our combined experience, we are still not able to predict exactly what is going to be in 5 years, because that's what when we see these breakthrough technologies, there are things which come up which we don't predict. But the important part is to be on having a pulse on what is happening and being able to react to it quickly is the most important thing.
Great. Thanks, Hari, for that. Next question I'll direct to Manish. Many organisations have invested in faster payments, but fewer seem to have transformed the treasury processes around them. From your experience, what differentiates the institutions that are genuinely real-time from those that are simply processing payments faster? And what should treasurers be prioritising over the next 12 to 24 months?
That's a great question. And one example of such situation where you've gone for, say, faster collections, but internally as an organization, you are not able to apply that cash quickly, then all that faster collection has not done anything for you. So getting the treasury processes fine-tuned, such as how do I reconcile that incoming collection actively, uh, those become more important, and organizations, those have sorted out those problems which are non-real time problems. Those are just problems around treasury hygiene of reconciliation, about reporting, about statements. Those are better positioned. And the second part of that would be, as Hari pointed out, how are the processes of procurement, for example, are matched to treasury processes? How are the sales processes nicely aligned with treasury processes? Uh, so I think most organizations have realized that, uh, especially those multinational ones, and they are making sure that in next 12 to 24 months, they are making those internal processes of treasury and treasury's interaction with other departments smoothened out before they go for full real-time cross-border treasury activities.
Thanks, Manish. I appreciate that. There's another question in the chat, which I'll direct to Rob, sharing them around, by the way. So ANZ's been mentioned in the press among organisations testing Swift Digital Ledger. What opportunities for treasurers will this new infrastructure bring? So, Rob, if you can maybe talk about what Swift Digital Ledger is,
Yes,
and then perhaps go to the opportunities, please. Thanks.
yeah, I might start with a bit of context, right? So I think that we talked a lot about digital assets and tokenization in the past half an hour or so. And it's a journey we've been on since 2022, effectively. And it's been a test and learn through applied innovation. So not reasoning from the desktop and theory, but actually getting our hands dirty and working on things. One of the things that we held as a kind of a key guiding principle was network effect is critical and scale. So it's okay to do proof of concepts. It's okay to do bilateral transactions. But how do you grow a network that uses tokenization at scale? So with Swift, you have 10,000 institutions connected to the network. So that has the hallmarks, we think, of being able to continue to use, standard gateways, secure, trusted messaging standards, but use the plumbing becomes tokenized, so to speak. So that's why we're interested in the Swift ledger. So the ledger itself effectively is an orchestration layer. So it's predicated on the idea, broadly speaking, that we understand that large banks such as ANZ and others will start to slowly adopt tokenized deposits as part of BAU. So we'll have that as part of the toolkit in terms of how we move money. And the Swift ledger allows us to coordinate between institutions how we can make cross-border payments theoretically on a 24/7 basis. So the next piece of work that will be explored, I think, is understanding that we have a two-tier money system, right? We need central banks to be available. We need them to provide funding, enable settlement outside of ours. So the Swift ledger helps us progress that discussion, first for money, but increasingly the idea, as we mentioned earlier, that you can tokenize assets. So can we have bonds? Can we have repo? Things occurring on this platform on a 24/7 basis. So the missing component that will get built out over time is central bank money being available in these venues. But I think to answer the question more concretely, for treasurers, the view over the medium to long term is move money 24/7, any time of the day, any location through the Swift network.
Yeah, real-time liquidity.
Yes.
So I might start to close up now because we're at time. And so, today's conversation is not about replacing Treasury judgment. It's about equipping Treasury with a better operating model for a faster, more fragmented and more programmable world. The common thread across everything we've talked about today is this: real-time data, orchestration, agentic execution, and tokenized money only create value when they all work together with strong policy and governance boundaries. And for Treasury leaders, the next practical step is to assess readiness in 4 areas: data quality, orchestration capability, policy design, and control frameworks. Start with one high-value use case such as intraday liquidity rebalancing, threshold-based sweeps, or pre-funding optimization. Build it from there with a clear human-in-the-loop model, then scale as confidence, interoperability, and governance maturity improve. And if your Treasury can already see liquidity in real time, what is stopping you from acting on that insight with the same speed and precision? So what matters now is practical progress. Not every organisation needs a complete transformation, but every organisation does need to think differently about where automation and decisioning should sit. For many organisations, the next step is not more manual oversight. It's better orchestration, smarter rules, clearer thresholds, and stronger real-time visibility. And trust becomes even more important as execution accelerates. That means governance, auditability, and those control frameworks we talked about earlier, they must evolve alongside the technology. And this is why also the role of a banking partner matters. Customers need infrastructure and expertise that will help them move faster without compromising control. So real-time treasury is not an end state, it's a continuous evolution, and we're talking about it a lot. And by adopting a real-time mindset, businesses can improve control, unlock liquidity, and support smarter decision-making at every level of the organisation. And we're here to support your efforts to shift your treasury functions from reactive functions to strategic enablement, to help your business scale more efficiently and to capture new opportunities with greater confidence. So as I said, we're at time, actually a little bit over time, a minute over. So thanks to our panelists today for such a thoughtful and practical discussion and taking those questions. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to hosting you at our next webinar, which will cover off on biofuels. Please scan the QR code on the screen to see what's coming up next and to view recordings of past webinars. Thank you for joining and enjoy the rest of your day.